The Wizard of Quantum by Johann Ortel. Chapter 3, Unanswered Questions. It was the evening of 9th of November, 1997. The small theater was dimly lit, the air thick with anticipation. Susan's father, Massimo Silva, a struggling magician in his early 40s, stood center stage, wrapping up his usual routine. His tired eyes scanned the sparse crowd as he forced a smile and delivered his bow. The applause was polite, but lacked enthusiasm, save for one person. Young Susan, just 10 years old, clapping with all her might from the front row. As Massimo exited, the theater manager, a charismatic man with a flair for the dramatic, swept onto the stage. A round of applause for the great Massimo Silva, the manager had called out, his voice echoing through the near-empty theater. Massimo continued bowing as the curtains slowly closed, the muted applause fading into the background. Behind the heavy velvet, he sighed, knowing that the next act could define his career, or end his life. Ladies and gentlemen, the theater manager announced with renewed energy, we have a special final act lined up for you tonight, something to really get your hearts racing. It's called the Silva Bullet. The curtains reopened, revealing an empty stage except for a heavy wooden prop at the center. Massimo had returned, now dressed in a full black robe, the hood drawn backward, leaving only his head visible. He stood in front of the prop, his posture rigid, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. From the side of the stage, a tall, hooded figure in a ruby-red robe glided into view, hands concealed within the deep folds of the sleeves. The audience gasped, a collective shiver rippling through them as the figure moved with slow, deliberate grace, taking its position across from Massimo. Sensing the shift in the air, Massimo pulled his hood over his head, obscuring his face completely. He stood motionless, a faceless silhouette on the dimly lit stage. The tension was palpable. The audience held their breath. Slowly, the figure in the ruby-red robe extended an arm from the folds of fabric, holding a gleaming silver .375 Magnum revolver pointed directly at Massimo. The audience gasped again, this time louder, as the gravity of the situation hit them. With the other hand, the hooded figure produced a silver timepiece on a chain and glanced at the time. As the revolver cocked, the click echoed ominously through the theater, chambering a single silver bullet. One final glance at the time, and the trigger was pulled. The shot rang out, deafening in the small theater. The bullet flew across the stage, its path swift and deadly as it tore through Massimo's robe. Behind him, the wooden prop shattered into splinters. The sound was overwhelming, the spectacle stunning. But when the smoke cleared, Massimo was gone. His bullet-torn black robe lay crumpled on the floor, empty. He had completely disappeared, leaving only the acrid smell of gunpowder lingering in the air. Back at the Silva house, the dining room was silent, everyone absorbing the story that Susan had just shared. The Silva Bullet show became an instant hit, Susan continued, her voice tinged with nostalgia. Every performance sold out. Every show ended in the ultimate cliffhanger, Graham added, in excitement. People would return to the next performance just to see if the great Massimo Silva was still alive and to witness the spectacle again. Susan continued, your father was always such a gentleman, always opening doors for me, making me feel like a little lady. And after every show, your father and we'd drive to New York. Markus nodded, leaning forward slightly. To your uncle's place. Yes. Susan replied, her fingers tracing the pattern on the tablecloth. Her voice softened as the memories surfaced. I was always so tired, I'd fall asleep in the back seat. I can't remember ever seeing my father after a show, only the next morning waking up in my bed to the smell of eggs, bacon, and pancakes. Her expression darkened slightly, but after the accident, everything changed. Even my papa, he wasn't the same. The magic was gone, and so was your father. Susan looked up at Markus, her voice trembling slightly. Your father had just disappeared. He left without even saying goodbye. We never saw him, or his famous wink, click, click, again. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Susan searched Markus's face, hoping for some kind of closure, a piece of the puzzle that had been missing for so long. But Markus remained silent, his face a mask that revealed nothing. His fingers galloped with a slow, rhythmic precision. Queen to D7, check! Little Massimo declared, closing in on the Black King. Markus stared at the chessboard, trapped, his options dwindling. He was under pressure, pushed into a corner. Or was he? Maybe, just maybe, every piece was exactly where he wanted it to be. The slow, rhythmic gallop of his fingers continued, almost mesmerizing, counting down to something. Then it suddenly stopped.